Imagine standing on a lonely desert world as twin suns sink behind the cliffs. When you discover a colossal dragon bound in chains, its glowing eyes locked on you, and a voice, not spoken aloud, but echoing inside your mind, whispers, "Please, free them." In that moment, one farmer's quiet life shatters into a battle for survival, a fight against the darkest syndicate in the galaxy, and the chance to protect the last hope of an entire species. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us in the comments where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The twin suns of Arden Prime dipped low behind the jagged cliffs, turning the wide desert plain into a sea of amber light and long shadows. At the edge of this fading glow stood Merrick Halden, a man who had lived more than 6 decades on this remote world. His hands were rough from years of hard work, his shoulders bent with age, but his eyes still carried the sharp focus of someone who had endured wars and survived countless storms. Merrick had chosen a quiet life, far from the chaos of the wider galaxy. But deep down, he always knew that peace never lasted forever. That evening, as the wind hissed across the barren soil and dust curled in the fading light, Merrick noticed something strange near the far ridge of his farm. His sensors had picked up unusual readings earlier, but he thought little of it. Out here, machines often gave false alarms. Yet when he walked closer, guided by habit more than curiosity, he saw a sight that made his heart pound harder than it had in years. Resting against a massive crystalline boulder was a dragon, easily 30 feet long from snout to tail. Its scales shimmered in the fading light, shifting between sapphire blue and deep obsidian black, as though the desert itself had given birth to living stone. Heavy chains clamped around its limbs and chest, binding it to the rock, and at its throat glowed a collar pulsing with a cruel red light. Merrick had seen technology like that before. It was not meant for restraint alone. It was meant to punish, to break the will of whatever wore it. For a long moment, he stood frozen, unsure if the creature was alive or just a cruel sculpture left behind by someone passing through. Then the dragon's 4 eyes opened, 2 large and 2 smaller beneath, glowing faintly in the dusk. They followed his every move with unsettling precision. Merrick's hand drifted to the plasma cutter at his belt, though he knew it would be useless if the beast chose to strike. Before he could speak, before he could even think clearly, a voice filled his mind. It was not sound carried by the wind, but a presence that pressed gently yet firmly into his thoughts. It was deep and resonant, but not hostile. "Please, free them." Merrick's breath caught. He looked around quickly, half expecting another person to appear, but the desert was empty. The voice came again, steady and patient, weaving through his mind like a song. "Please, free them." The old farmer felt his knees stiffen. He had heard of telepathic creatures, even read about them during his younger years in the service, but never had he expected to stand face to face with one. His instinct told him to walk away, to leave whatever trouble this was behind. Yet something in those eyes stopped him. There was strength there, yes, but also something he had not expected. There was exhaustion. There was pain, and beneath it all, there was a plea for mercy. Merrick edged closer, one slow step at a time. "Well now," he muttered under his breath, voice dry and cautious. "That's not something you hear every day." The dragon shifted slightly, the chains clinking against the crystal boulder. The sound was heavy, metallic, and cruel. Merrick's gaze dropped to the ground beside the creature and froze again. Sitting at the dragon's side was a reinforced container, rectangular and sleek, its surface etched with locks that glowed faintly with shifting patterns of light. He had seen devices like it before in another life. They were built to protect whatever was inside from anyone without proper clearance. The dragon's voice pressed into his thoughts once more, slower this time, as if each word cost it great effort. The container, you must release them. Merrick's hand hovered near his cutter again. He felt his heart beating too fast, his mouth dry as sand. Release what exactly? He asked, though he wasn't sure if the creature could hear spoken words or only thoughts. The dragon's great head dipped low, its breathing uneven, the collar sparking faintly as though punishing it for even trying to speak. Life, it whispered, and the force of that single word shivered down Merrick's spine. He stood in silence for several long moments, staring at the chained giant before him. Every part of his common sense screamed that this was dangerous, but every part of his past, every scar he carried from years spent in battles long forgotten, told him that sometimes danger came with purpose, and sometimes purpose arrived when you least expected it. Merrick crouched near the chains, careful not to step too close. His sharp eyes examined the locks, the collar, the patterns of energy pulsing from its core. The design was far too advanced for local smugglers or miners. This was syndicate work. He recognized it immediately. The thought sent a shiver of anger through him. He had not spoken that name in years, not since leaving his old life behind. But the sight of this suffering creature, proud even in its brokenness, stirred memories he had buried long ago. He looked up at the dragon again. The setting suns painted the sky in shades of violet and gold, and in that moment, the world felt utterly still. The plea hung in his mind like an unanswered question. Please, free them. Merrick exhaled slowly. All right, he said at last. His voice steady, though his heart still pounded. Let's start with finding out what kind of trouble you've brought to my doorstep. And with those words, the life of a lonely farmer began to unravel, leading him toward mysteries and choices far greater than anything he had faced before. Night settled over Arden Prime, the twin suns fading beyond the cliffs until the sky turned into a blanket of deep indigo. The desert wind carried a chill, slipping through the cracks of Merrick Halden's coat as he crouched by the chained dragon. The glow of the collar around the creature's neck pulsed like a heartbeat, a steady reminder of the suffering it carried. Merrick had lived a life of grit and silence. For more than 15 years he had hidden from his past, working his farm, minding his own business, and convincing himself that the galaxy had forgotten him. But as he studied the glowing restraint, he realized his old life was knocking at his door once again. The dragon's voice filled his mind, softer now, like a whisper sliding into his thoughts. I am called Caltharian, it said, each word slow and deliberate, as if pushing against the weight of the collar itself. Once, I was guardian of a world named Dravis, where my kin lived in freedom. That world is gone now. Merrick paused, his eyes narrowing. The name stirred memory. He had read about Dravis long ago, a place rich with crystal canyons and sky so bright it was said dragons soared through light itself. Reports had claimed the planet was destroyed in an industrial accident, but anyone with sense knew better. Let me guess, Merrick muttered, keeping his voice low though no one was around. Accidents don't leave scars like the ones on your wings. The dragon shifted, chains clattering against the boulder. It was the Iron Syndicate, Caltharian confessed, the words rumbling inside Merrick's skull. They bombarded our world and claimed what remained. They deal in life as others deal in coin. Merrick's jaw tightened. The Iron Syndicate. He had heard the name whispered with fear, remembered it written in old files he once studied. Their reach stretched far, their cruelty deeper still. He leaned closer to examine the collar, noting the delicate circuits laced into the metal, the faint smell of scorched air. Black market engineering, he murmured, meant to break both body and mind. The dragon's 4 eyes studied him carefully. You recognize their work, it said, a faint spark of surprise echoing in its tone. Merrick hesitated. His calloused hands brushed over the glowing locks, steady despite the tremor of memories rising in him. He thought of battles fought long ago, of his years as a field engineer for the colonial service, of the questions he once asked about disappearing species, questions that had nearly cost him his life. I've seen enough of the Syndicate's toys to last me 2 lifetimes, he said, ... Caltharian shifted again, its chains scraping across stone. Then you understand the danger. Merrick glanced toward the container lying near the dragon, its locks pulsing faintly in the dark. What's inside that case? He asked, though a part of him already dreaded the answer. The dragon's mind voice trembled as it replied. Eggs. 27 of them. The last clutch from Dravis. The Syndicate stole them, planning to sell them to buyers who crave rare lives for profit or sport. I was bound here as their unwilling guard, forced to protect what I once swore to nurture. The words sank into Merrick like cold iron. 27 unborn lives, trapped and tampered with. His stomach turned. He had seen rare creatures sold in secret markets, heard the whispered stories of collectors, paying fortunes to own something unique. But dragon eggs were more than currency. They were legacy. And you want me to open it, Merrick said, half to himself. Release them, save them. Caltharian's head lowered, the great eyes gleaming with pride dulled by exhaustion. Yes, though it will put you in the path of danger, they will not forgive anyone who steals from them. Especially not this. Merrick sat back, running a weathered hand over his face. He thought of the years he had spent burying his past. He thought of the quiet mornings tending crops, of the endless days convincing himself that his exile was freedom. And then he thought of the dragon. Beaten yet unbroken, and of the eggs, waiting in silence for a fate they did not choose. The choice before him felt heavy, but it was no longer unfamiliar. He had made such choices before, in another life, when he still believed he could change the universe 1 act at a time. All right, Merrick said at last, his voice low but steady. Let's see what I can do about this collar. He pulled a multi-tool from his belt, its metal edges worn but reliable. Crouching close, he began to study the collar's locks, noting the primary mechanism and the secondary traps designed to fry the nervous system of anyone tampering without care. Whoever designed this wanted you alive, but only just, he muttered. They made it to hurt you every time you try to resist. Caltharian's breathing deepened, a soft rumble rolling across the ground. They wanted to break me, but I endured. Time became blurred. Weeks, months, it is hard to tell. Merrick worked carefully, using thin probes to test the circuits. His old instincts returned with surprising ease, each movement precise, each adjustment measured. He had not forgotten the craft, even after years of pretending to be just a farmer. He noticed scars etched into Caltharian's scales, burns that had been deliberately placed to prevent flight. Deep cuts across its flank told of electro-whips. Each mark whispered of cruelty. Syndicate handiwork, Merrick said, his voice bitter. Same pattern as before. They've only grown worse. Period. The dragon's eyes closed briefly, then opened again. I have suffered, but the eggs must not. They are all that remains of us. Without them, my kind will vanish from the stars. Merrick's chest tightened at the weight of those words. His mind flickered to images of extinction reports he once studied, species wiped from existence by greed. He had sworn to protect life once, long ago. Perhaps he had not lost that oath after all. "I'll get this collar off," he said firmly, fingers steady as he worked at the lock. "But once I do, we'll both be in deeper trouble than you can imagine." The dragon's mental voice carried strength again, despite the pain. "Then we face it together. I will not see them perish while I still draw breath." Merrick met those eyes, and for the first time that night, he saw not just a creature in chains, but an ally. And so the farmer who had once been a scholar began his return to the life he thought he had left behind. Guided by the voice of the past and the desperate hope of a dying kind, the collar clicked once, then again, and at last fell away with a heavy thud, sending sparks into the sand. Cal Theron gasped, the sound like thunder rolling across the canyon. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, the dragon drew a full breath without pain. Its scales brightened, shifting through waves of deep blue and silver, shimmering as though the night sky had taken root in its skin. Merrick Haldon stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. His fingers ached from the careful work, but a spark of pride burned quietly inside him. After all these years of pretending to be nothing more than a farmer, the truth of who he had once been was resurfacing. The dragon lowered its massive head until its eyes were level with Merrick's. "You have done what few could," Caltharion said, its voice stronger now, carrying both relief and gratitude. "Thank you, human." Merrick gave a short nod, his tone dry. "Don't thank me yet. The hard part's still in front of us. That container isn't just locked. It's designed to keep out anyone without the exact key." His gaze drifted to the reinforced case resting against the crystal boulder. Faint light patterns rippled across its surface, shifting like living lines. Merrick had worked with security systems before. This one wasn't ordinary. It required not only a physical code, but genetic markers and brainwave signatures. And that meant it had been sealed by someone high within the syndicate. Caltharion's tail shifted across the ground, stirring dust. "It was sealed by their leader," the dragon said, anger sharpening its tone. "They forced me to watch as he locked away the eggs. His name is Veyron Called. His cruelty is known across the systems." Merrick stiffened. He remembered the name. He remembered reports filled with disappearances, raids, and the trafficking of rare creatures. Cald's reputation was one of power mixed with arrogance. It did not surprise him that the man would brandish dragon eggs as a prize to sell. The farmer crouched by the container, running his fingers along its surface. "The syndicate will be back," he said grimly. "Buyers will come here thinking this treasure belongs to them. If we open it, we invite trouble. If we don't, the eggs are doomed anyway." The dragon's eyes burned with determination. "They are the last of us. We cannot let them become weapons or slaves." Merrick inhaled slowly, then pulled a small scanner from his belt. It was an old tool, one he had once used as a researcher studying xenobiology. He placed it against the container. Faint beeps echoed in the quiet night, tracing the patterns of the lock. As he worked, Caltharion shifted closer, its breath warm and heavy against the sand. The dragon's scars glimmered in the moonlight, each mark a reminder of cruelty endured. Merrick noticed how carefully the creature kept its posture. Proud even in exhaustion. "You've held yourself together through more pain than most could endure," Merrick said quietly. "Why?" The dragon's voice softened, echoing in his mind. Because the eggs were entrusted to me. I was guardian of the nurseries of Dravis. When the bombs fell, I gathered the last clutch. They destroyed our home, but I swore these lives would not be lost. Even chained, I held to that vow. Merrick's chest tightened at the words. He had once sworn oaths too. Oaths to protect, to defend, to preserve. Oaths that had been crushed by betrayal and fear. But here, in this dragon's plea, he felt those promises stir again. The scanner beeped louder. Merrick frowned, tapping commands into the device. This lock has neural triggers. Whoever sealed it wanted the eggs under more than just physical control. They're forcing patterns into the shells, programming them before they even hatch. Caeltharion growled, the sound shaking the ground. They mean to raise slaves, hatchlings who cannot think for themselves, who will obey buyers without question. It is an abomination. Merrick pressed his lips into a thin line. I've seen it before. Neural imprinting. It strips choice away before life even begins. I thought such research had been banned years ago. The dragon's mental voice rumbled with fury. Bans mean nothing to those who hunger for power. After several tense minutes, the container hissed. Light cascaded across its surface before the locks disengaged with a soft click. Merrick activated a stabilizer field, ensuring the interior atmosphere remained intact. Carefully, he opened the case. Both man and dragon leaned forward. What they saw froze them in awe. Inside lay 27 eggs, each one held in a glowing stasis field. They were unlike anything Merrick had ever seen. Some swirled with crimson veined with gold. Others gleamed midnight blue with tiny silver stars. One shimmered pure white with patterns like galaxies spinning inside. They pulsed faintly, alive, waiting. But alongside their beauty was something darker. Tiny transmitters clung to the stasis units, feeding artificial impulses into the eggs. It was brainwashing, designed to twist innocence into obedience. Merrick's hand shook slightly as he reached for one. They're alive, he whispered, but they're being taught to dream what the Syndicate wants them to believe. Caeltharion's fury burned hot, its scales glowing brighter. We must remove the devices. Every moment they remain, the hatchlings are shaped into chains. Merrick closed the container gently, securing the stabilizer. We'll need proper equipment, he said. My farm has an old basement, built from the bones of a military outpost. I kept it for research I thought I'd never do again, but it'll be enough. It has incubators, monitors, everything we'll need. The dragon studied him, eyes sharp with curiosity. You are no simple farmer. Merrick let out a humorless laugh. Not always. Before I buried myself out here, I was Dr. Merrick Halden, xenobiologist. Endangered life was my field. I studied the Syndicate's work until they taught me the cost of asking questions. I lost fingers. I lost everything I thought I was. So I hid. He looked back at the container, at the fragile lives glowing inside. But I can't hide anymore. The dragon's voice resonated with new strength. Then you and I share the same path. We will save them together. Merrick nodded, his decision clear. We'll get them out of these prisons, and when the Syndicate comes, we'll be ready. The night stretched around them, silent but alive with purpose. For the first time in years, Merrick felt the fire of his old self awaken. Not a farmer, not a recluse, but a protector. And beside him, a dragon no longer broken, but rising in strength, ready to fight for the future of its kind. Darkness settled heavy across Arden Prime. The twin suns long vanished behind the jagged cliffs. The desert air cooled, carrying the silence of a world that seemed empty but was now alive with danger. Merrick Halden stood at the edge of his farmstead, staring into the wide canyon beyond. He could hear the faint hum of approaching ships, 3 in total, each one sleek and predatory. The syndicate buyers had arrived. Behind him, inside the reinforced basement, lay the container with 27 dragon eggs, each still pulsing with faint life and waiting for their chance to hatch free. Beside the container rested Caeltherion, its wings folded, but its eyes burning like stars, filled with determination. Merrick adjusted the plasma cutter at his belt, though he knew the tool was mostly for show now. Their real weapon was the truth, a dragon no longer broken, and a plan bold enough to frighten even the most ruthless of buyers. The first ship landed in the canyon, with a sharp hiss of steam. Tall alien figures stepped out, their skin shifting colors with emotion, glowing purple with anticipation and sharp yellow with greed. The second ship arrived moments later, filled with wealthy human traders who dealt in rare creatures for their own twisted gain. The third followed quickly, bringing promoters from the outer colonies who saw dragons only as weapons for battle arenas. The 3 groups met at the base of the ridge, glaring at each other with suspicion. Each had been promised exclusive access. Each now realized they had been deceived. Merrick walked out from the shadows, his leather coat billowing in the wind, his voice steady, though his heart raced. "Gentlemen, ladies, and all in between," he called, his tone sharp. "The syndicate apologizes for the confusion. Tonight, you'll each have a chance to prove your worth." The buyers erupted with protest, their voices clashing with anger. Promises had been. Deposits had been paid. Threats were muttered under the night sky. Merrick raised his hand, waiting until silence fell again. "There are 27 eggs," he said firmly. "Mr. Cald has decided an auction will determine who deserves them. Bid high, bid fast, or leave empty-handed." The words did their work. Greed overpowered caution. Arguments shifted into frantic offers, accusations into bargaining. The groups turned on one another, each trying to outbid the others. That was the signal. A roar split the sky, rolling across the canyon like thunder. The buyers froze, their eyes snapping toward the ridge. There, silhouetted against the night, stood Caeltherion, no longer bound, no longer broken. Its wings stretched wide, scales blazing with colors that lit the darkness. Its 4 eyes burned, and when its voice struck their minds, it hit like a storm. "Thieves," the dragon thundered. "You dare bargain with the children of Drathis? You would turn life into coin and innocence into chains." Panic surged through the crowd. Some tried to run. Others pulled weapons, firing energy bolts that fizzled uselessly against Caeltherion's radiant scales. Merrick stepped forward, holding the plasma cutter high. "The syndicate tests loyalty," he declared with cold precision. "And you all failed. You never came here. You never saw eggs. You never saw me. If you value your lives, you'll leave." The buyers stumbled over themselves, retreating toward their ships. The Alterans fled first, their skin flashing crimson with fear. The human traders cursed and shouted, but fear drove them too. The fight promoters held their ground longest, firing in defiance, but Caeltherion's roar shattered their courage. Within minutes, all 3 ships were gone, lifting into the night sky and vanishing into the stars. Silence returned to the canyon, broken only by Merrick's slow exhale. Caeltherion lowered its wings, its voice softer now. "They will not be gone for long. When Cald realizes, he will come himself." Merrick nodded grimly. "Then we'd better be ready." Over the next days, the farmstead transformed. The basement became a nursery, filled with glowing incubators and humming monitors. Scientists arrived, old colleagues who still believed in protecting life. Former soldiers came too, carrying weapons and experience, eager for a cause worth fighting for. Farmers, traders, and wanderers who owed Merrick debts or who simply wanted to resist the syndicate brought supplies and skills. Merrick had fought himself alone for so many years. Now his quiet homestead was alive with purpose, voices, and hope. The first egg hatched on the 10th day. The shell cracked with soft sound, and out stumbled a hatchling no larger than a small cat, its scales shimmering silver and gold. It blinked at the world with wide eyes and let out a squeak that echoed through the nursery. Caltharion lowered its great head. Voice trembling with emotion. "Welcome, little one. You are free." Merrick stood nearby, his rough hands steady as he helped set the hatchling into a warmed nest. For a long moment, he simply stared at the tiny creature. He had seen many wonders in his life, but nothing compared to this. More eggs followed, each unique, each alive with its own colors and spirit. Some bold, some shy, some curious. The nursery filled with life and sound. And Merrick found himself smiling more than he had in years. But beneath the joy lay the weight of what was to come. The syndicate would not forget. Veyron called, would not forgive. The storm was coming. Still, as Merrick stood beside Caltharion, watching the hatchlings stumble and stretch their small wings, he felt no fear, only resolve. For the first time since leaving his old life, he knew exactly who he was. Not just a farmer, not just a survivor, but a protector. A guardian of hope. He turned to the dragon, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. "Let them come," Merrick said quietly. "Because this time, we're not running. This time, we're building something worth fighting for." And in that moment, beneath the twin suns of Arden Prime, farmer and dragon stood side by side, allies bound not by chance, but by choice, ready to face whatever dawn would bring.